Hey guys, coming for the Americans, Season 5, Episode 8, Immersion. I was definitely looking forward to this episode, especially after what we got in the last episode with Gabriel leaving. It really did seem like we were getting a change of pace here, and I have to say, while this episode wasn't necessarily big, this was one of the more table setting type of episodes, which the Americans always seems to do a good job with. This was still a very riveting episode. A lot of this episode is kind of like, where's the season really going to go from here, with Gabriel gone and everything, and I definitely really did love where this episode is going. I think this season is going in a very interesting direction, but let's just get into this episode and talk about where I think we're really going to go and everything like that. So we start off and we see Phillip had just returned home from saying goodbye to Gabriel, and he and Elizabeth are still kind of riled about their longtime handler heading back to the Soviet Union. They don't know why he is doing this now, and Phillip reveals to Elizabeth that Gabriel is very worried about Paige, and he warns them not to get involved in the spy business, just to do anything they can to not get her involved. It's just kind of too late now because she is so involved, and we know she is asking so many questions that they can't really not get her involved. Like, I get it that obviously they want to keep her away from it, but there's only so much they can do. I mean, she knows about their mission. She knows about Gabriel. She knows about basically everything now. I mean, it just doesn't really seem like that's a possible thing. Like, it seems like they have to get her involved now. And Elizabeth doesn't really seem that affected on their daughter as Phillip is. Like, she seems like it's kind of like a good thing and that they shouldn't really worry about what Gabriel's saying. But Phillip is definitely very worried, we can see. Which you can understand, obviously, why Phillip is so worried. Elizabeth, I don't think it's as effective because I think she thinks that Paige joining is kind of a good thing. Like, she's training with Paige and everything. I don't think she wants to lose that, like, mother-daughter relationship that they're starting to develop, because their relationship has always been kind of rocky, and her and Phillip's has always been a little bit more solid, and I think she's in a good place with Paige right now, and I think she kind of wants to keep that. So really did like the way this first scene was done. But we see the next day after school, Henry has two of his friends over to play video games with him, and Elizabeth, Phillip, and Stan are watching from the kitchen, and they're convinced that Henry has a crush on the girl that he invited over, and Stan and the Jennings are then comparing notes about Stan's son and Paige's breakup, and of course, they know definitely what this is all about, and they're trying to do their best to keep Stan out of it, because obviously they don't want Stan to know the real reason why Paige and Matthew broke up, but Stan does know about the breakup. Luckily, Phillip does change the subject and quizzes Stan about Renee, and Phillip's convinced that Renee is a spy sent from the center, even though Gabriel said that she was not, and he's convinced. He doesn't think that Gabriel was actually right. He's still convinced that she is in fact a spy, and I think Phillip is still onto something. Even though Gabriel said, oh, don't worry about her, she has nothing to do with it, I think definitely Phillip is in fact onto something, because I just haven't really trusted Renee. It seems like she always needs these big answers from Stan. She's always asking him all these questions. It seems very curious. Like, why is she so interested in these certain things in his life? Like, why is she so interested? It makes sense why Phillip is so suspicious, and I think he kind of does have a right to be. So, in the Soviet Union, Oleg is on his way out, and he's cornered by these three men in suits, and apparently some issues have come up, and they want to search his father's house, and he escorts the man upstairs, and he gives them permission to search his bedroom, and his father doesn't really look impressed, and naturally his mother's very worried because she knows the CIA was actually trying to contact him, and they tear apart Oleg's room. They even pull up the rug. They take the piano apart. I mean, they definitely mean business here. Like, they are doing everything they can to just go through his room, and they ransack it, and while they're searching his room, he heads to the kitchen to comfort his mom, because obviously you could tell his mom was very worried, and because she knows, what the CIA was doing, and the men leave as quickly as they arrive, which I was surprised how quickly they actually left, but they literally tear apart his entire room, and they apologize to Oleg's father for the intrusion, because again, Oleg has to make himself seem like he's not there, and basically, after they leave, Oleg's father demands to know what's really going on. Oleg insists it's nothing, that they were just doing their job. Remember, Oleg's father knows nothing about what's been going on with the CIA. His mother does, but I think eventually he is going to have to find out. Like, I know Oleg obviously wants to make it seem like he can stay there for as long as possible, but that's just not the case. Eventually, he's gonna have to leave, and I think he's gonna have to go back, to the CIA, even though we know that Oleg burned that, he burned a lot of that stuff, and he tried to get out of the CIA and basically, tried to burn his profile and everything. I don't think it's going to work out that easily for him. So Elizabeth puts on her disguise. She heads over to Morozov, to Alex's house, and to check on his wife. And she's working for the U.S. government, teaching Americans Russians. And she mentions that one of her students is a big sex guy and woman like him, which seems to perk Elizabeth's interest. Of course, that means he is a womanizer. And later that night, Philip and Elizabeth then head to the safe house, and Gabriel is now gone, and Claudia is now waiting for them. So obviously it would make sense, because we've seen Claudia in like small doses throughout the last season. We've seen her a lot this season, and it kind of seemed like it was inevitable for Claudia to come back as their handler. As we know, season 1, she was their handler. They didn't trust her, so she kind of left. Then Kate was kind of their handler for a little bit, and then, of course, Kate ended up being dead. So then they got Gabriel. Now that Gabriel's gone, now they basically have to get Claudia again. She'll be handling all of their cases now, and I get it, obviously, that it seems kind of abrupt that Claudia returns. I know some people, would have kind of been cool to see what it would be like without a handler for them, but I feel like if there wasn't a handler, there wouldn't really be a show. So it makes sense why Claudia is back, and she tells him to keep it up with Kemp and Stobart while they're waiting for the analysis from the grain samples, and their meeting's very awkward, to say the least. Claudia wants them to stay for tea, but they refuse. They want to know where she's been. She's not really telling them, and Phillip makes it clear that they know what they're doing and they don't really need her. But the question is, do they? I mean, they got the whole mission wrong, as we know. So, do they really know what they're doing at this point? I don't really know, honestly. I think even though Phillip says, look, we know what we're doing, I don't really know if that's the case. And they don't need to spend any, they feel, unnecessary time with Claudia. They feel like they really don't need her. They've outgrown her. They know what they're doing. I don't really think that's the case, though. I think they actually really do need someone like Claudia, and I think, honestly, a lot of her, guidance is kind of needed here in this situation, especially because Gabriel was such a father figure to Philip and Elizabeth. Even though he was kind of this villainous, very powerful figure, he always was there to give them these pep talks, and he always was there to kind of help them out. And now that's kind of gone, because Gabriel's left them, and we don't really know what's going to happen. They just have never been as close with Claudia, because as we know, she didn't make a good first impression initially. They never really trusted her from the beginning, so because of that, as we know, they never really trusted Claudia, and while that kind of just affected, I think, their overall trust with her, and I don't think she's going to get it back as easily as she thinks she is. So when they get home, Elizabeth announces she's going to cancel her next trip to see Stobart, and even though that's the exact opposite of what Claudia told them to do. So they're definitely going against what Claudia said. Things have been very awkward since they actually caught Stobart cheating on Elizabeth, and it was obvious she does have feelings for him. So she's trying to steer away from him because she knows definitely that what they have is not real. And Phil decides that he will cancel his trip to see Deirdre too. And you can tell that Deirdre, she's not exactly happy about it, but she's actually fine with it. Like, she was planning on breaking up with him anyway because he's like a really nice guy, but apparently she wants someone who's like a lot more macho. And of course, if only she knew who Philip really was and what he really can do. I mean, she just basically latch onto his dick in a second. But, Deirdre in general, you can tell Deirdre, she's always very independent. She knows very well what she wants in a guy, and I thought it was interesting to see her react the way. I thought it was kind of funny that she said that to Phil, because we know, of course, who he actually is. But Stan and Aderholt then meet up with the Russian woman that they're trying to recruit, and they talk numbers that the government's willing to pay her $500 a month. And she's thrilled because it sounds like a ton of money to her. And she plans to save half of it for her son's education and the other half to buy a house. But she drives a hard bargain that she has problems with her teeth and wants help with a dentist. And Stan agrees that they can take care of her dental bills too. And they prep her on what to tell her coworkers about where she was when she eventually does return to work. So it seems like they actually are trying to help her out. Like, things seem to be working well for her. As we know, they're trying to recruit her as a means to keep Oleg out of it. And it seems that she has a lot of demands. And the real question is, are they willing to adhere to said demands? That's really the big question here, is are they really willing to listen to her? So Elizabeth heads to a payphone. She calls Stobart, and he's thrilled to hear from her. Remember, she wasn't going to get involved, but he's not too happy that she cancels their visit next week, obviously, because of the fact that, he was, basically, that he did like what they had. And Elizabeth lies and says she won't be back in town for another few weeks. Obviously, it's not the case. I think she's just trying to move on because, holy shit, she has feelings for him and she knows he's cheating on her. She's just trying to move away from all that. But Phillip then cancels things with Deirdre. Like I said, Deirdre doesn't really care because she was going to dump him anyway because she doesn't really have a future with him. So I'm guessing that's the end of Deirdre. Like, I don't think we're going to see her again for the rest of the season, but I could be wrong. But right now, I think that's kind of like we're not going to see Deirdre for a lot of the season. So, because there's really no point in Phillip continuing what he has with her, obviously, because things didn't work out well with Deirdre. So we'll have to see where that's going to go. But later, Elizabeth and Paige, they have another self-defense lesson in the garage, and their scenes this episode were actually some of my favorites. I really like we've been getting from these two, because like I said, their relationship has always been a little bit more strained than that of her and Phillip's, and by giving them more to do, it's really further expanded on their relationship. And Paige hasn't really been doing well since the incident in the parking lot a few weeks ago, and she's growing very impatient. She wants to know when she will be able to defend herself already. And Elizabeth and Paige then share a moment because Elizabeth actually confesses that she was raped when she was 18, and she used to be as scared as Paige is now. But as we know, Elizabeth is really toughened up. And by finding this out, it makes sense why Elizabeth is so tough and why many things don't faze her. I think it's because of how terrified she was when she lets her I think Elizabeth just knows how she is when she lets her emotions get in the way. And a lot of people have said, oh, Elizabeth is so emotionless, and I don't think that's true. I think deep down these things do affect her, but I think she just knows that she can't go into these things feeling very emotional, because when her emotions get the best of her, she can't really control herself, and she's not, as tough as everyone thinks she is. I think she just kind of, that's kind of like the facade that she goes about doing, because she does that kind of like for her own good, so that way things won't really affect her. But this really connects Elizabeth and Paige in a much deeper way than I thought it was going to, and I really did love this scene overall. So Oleg then heads to work in the morning, and his boss is quizzing about his house that's being searched, and Oleg covers up, says that he accused a file about his mother that he shouldn't have, and that's what set off the red flags. Obviously, we know that's not the case. We know the CIA is in search of him, and they plan on succeeding with that, but I do like the way he's covering things up. However, I don't think he's going to be able to cover things up for that much longer. I think as much as he wants to, I don't think this is going to go as well as he thinks. So Phillip's getting ready for bed. He finds Elizabeth in their bedroom in her nightgown doing Tai Chi, and Stobart apparently taught her how to do it, and Phillip confesses that Deirdre actually did break up with him because he wasn't aggressive enough with her, and Elizabeth then lectures him about not really trying to seal the deal and tanking it on purpose, and that he, basically did that so things wouldn't go well between them. And Elizabeth blames it on his trips to S, that they are teaching him to be too nice, and that he can't just be too nice. He needs to be, tough. And we know how tough Phillip used to be, but ever since he's been at S, he's been a little bit more restrained, and he's been a little bit more doubtful about a lot of the things that they've been doing. And she scoffs that he just got kicked out of bed by a 45-year-old logistics manager. He's obviously not doing something right, because of the fact that he just got kicked out of bed. There's definitely something he's not doing right there. So the next day, he puts in his disguise, and he tails Alex's wife to her new job, when she's teaching Americans to speak Russian, and Elizabeth follows in a second car. She told Elizabeth she was going to one of her students' houses, but something seems to be off. She gets out of the car to snap some photos, and it looks like his wife is actually having an affair, and she takes a picture of them kissing on the front porch, which that was definitely very surprising, because, yeah, she's having an affair. So Elizabeth then meets with Claudia, fills her in on the affair. They share a small chat, and Claudia reveals that she went home for a while to spend time with her daughter and grandchildren, we find out. And she's upset because the kids actually didn't remember her, and she questions Elizabeth about Paige. It sounds like Elizabeth is leaning towards getting Paige involved with the censor. Like, now that Paige knows all of this stuff, that she does, they might as well get her involved. And, Claudia didn't know a lot about what happened with Paige, even though she does know what happened because Gabriel told her. She has to pretend she didn't know. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see, the difference between these two. Obviously, we know, we know what's really going on with the center. We know very well what's is actually going on with Claudia and Gabriel. So I'm definitely seeing how this all really does play out. And the differing opinions between Elizabeth and Philip, I've always found very fascinating in the show, and this is a very good example of that. So meanwhile, Philip actually heads to a payphone. He calls Deirdre again, but this time he leaves a message on a machine, tries to salvage their relationship, tells her on the machine that he's married, and she suddenly picks up the phone just because he's cheating on his wife. I guess this is the kind of guy that she likes. She likes her men rough. She likes her men to be a little bit scandalous. And, I guess that's just the kind of woman that Deirdre is. So the next day, Elizabeth and Phil finally meet up with Tuan after so many episodes. The last time we saw him, I think, was like episode 5, but we do see him again. They check in with him, and they fill him in on the affair and how they plan to use it to get her to go back home to Moscow. And Tuan volunteers to help the situation by bullying her son Pasha, so she will want to move back home. Because as we know, up to this point, he's been a friend to Pasha. Like, they've had a really good friendship, and if he is bullying Pasha, then Pasha will definitely want to return back home. So before they leave, Tuan tells them that they need to be at their fake house more because he really enjoys it, and you get the sense that he really enjoys this life that he has with Phillip and Elizabeth, even though he knows it's not actually real. I really did enjoy this, but then we get to the final scene here, which I really did love, between Elizabeth and Paige, where Elizabeth heads home. She finds Paige lying on the couch watching TV, and she realizes that now that Paige doesn't see Matthew, she doesn't really have much to do in her life, and she convinces Paige to go for a walk with her. She chats with her about her breakup with Matthew, and Paige is still very intrigued by her mom's rape story. She never saw this side of her mom before, this more weaker side, and she really wants to find out more about it. And she asks her more questions about what happened. Elizabeth gives her a speech about time healing all wounds and how things will get easier as the days go by. And the conversation then turns and they discuss Elizabeth's job, and she confesses to Paige that if she wasn't a spy, she would want to be a doctor in a third world country so that she can make a difference and actually help people, and that's kind of what she should do. And it's a really great bonding between mother and daughter, them really starting to understand each other, and it's a really great end to what is a very well done episode. So overall, while this episode wasn't nearly as big as some of the other ones that we've had, I still really did enjoy this episode. There's a lot of really great, thoughtful conversations going on here, especially going on with Elizabeth and Paige, because at least to me, it seems like Elizabeth wants to get Paige involved with the center. Now, Philip is convinced that that's not a good idea. Gabriel said that they should have never gotten her involved in the first place. He has a lot of doubts about it. Elizabeth seems a little bit more optimistic. Like, this is the right path for Paige to go. And especially after sharing this story with her, we've seen these two are really not that different at all. I mean, they're very similar in many ways. They've both had a lot of heartbreaks. Sure, what Elizabeth went through is far worse than what Paige did, but they both have gone through a lot of hardships in their life. They both had to overcome a lot of tragedies, and by doing that, it's made them stronger. And I think Paige eventually, she's going to toughen up. She's going to get stronger. You can tell she does want to actually defend herself and have to fight, and I think Paige is at a point where she knows she has to get involved. Even though she doesn't really want to be involved, I think Paige is starting to realize that she does have to get involved in the center, and I think Elizabeth is thinking of getting her involved with that. So we'll have to see the way all of that turns out. I think that relationship has right now in this episode has already become a lot more interesting than I already was. Like, I was already very interested in them training because, again, we haven't really touched upon their relationship as much as Philip and Paige. They're always have been more rock solid. They've always understood each other more. But ever since this training has gone on, these two have really got into, we peel back the layers a bit, I think, of their overall relationship and really what Elizabeth's gone through. And like I said, I don't think she is the emotionless, robotic figure that we've always seen her as. I think just she's gone through so much in her life that it really has hardened her. A lot of those experiences have taught her to be a lot more tough, and I think one day Paige will be as tough as Elizabeth. I would not be surprised if this show ends with like a flash forward where we see Paige essentially becoming Elizabeth. I could very well see something like that happening, and I think that's kind of where we're headed here. So I really like their scene scare. I thought that was probably one of the strongest elements of this episode, and I really did like what we got here. And as far as Claudia, it seems like things are kind of awkward between the two, but it seems that Claudia, she is in fact opening up to Elizabeth. They're starting to develop more of a relationship, and I feel like, yes, Philip really can't connect well to her. They never really seem to have much of a relationship, but Elizabeth and Claudia seem like they are going to get close. I'm interested in seeing really what Claudia is going to bring to the table. It's a different type of energy than what Gabriel had, but I think it's just as welcoming. I've always really liked Margot Martindale. I'm glad to see she's back on the show. She has another chance to be nominated because that's one of the only nominations the show has gotten until last year, of course. But Margot Martindale, I think, is probably going to get another nomination because she always does, and I'm glad to see she's much more prominent this season because I've always really liked Claudia as a character. Sure, they didn't know how to trust her, but it seems that Elizabeth is willing to move past that. You know, that happened in the past, and now they're willing to move past it, and I'm glad to see that. So I really like what we got with Claudia here. I thought that was definitely very strong. As far as what's going on with Alex, it seems that they're going to try to use this to get them to leave the house and to go back home because they want to leave them out of it. Tuan seems like he's starting to get a little too attached to Phillip and Elizabeth, but it makes sense. I mean, remember, they're a pretend family. They're not actually a family, and I think by him doing that, he is going to start to get very attached to them and pretend that he actually does live with them, because we don't know much about Tuan beyond that, and I think we're going to find out more in the second half of the season, but right now, we don't know too much about Tuan besides the fact that Phillip and Elizabeth are not really his parents, which is sad, but that's the truth. They're not really his parents, and we'll have to see really where that's going to go if he does decide to, bully Pasha, which would be really sad to see. We know the bond he's had with him, but we'll have to see really where that goes. I think that definitely is going to be interesting. And then as far as the other sort of relationships that Elizabeth and Philip have, Stoberts and Deirdre, I like how Elizabeth really did chastise Philip for kind of being a softie with Deirdre, because that's not who Philip is. Philip is a lot tougher. He's a lot more macho, and that's just not the Philip she fell in love with. He's not nearly as tough as he used to be. She thinks Est is really starting to weaken him, and I like that Deirdre finally picked up the phone after he admitted to having an affair, which we know is not really true. I mean, this is kind of an affair, but in the same way, it's his mark as well, so it doesn't really count necessarily. But I'm interested in seeing really where this is going to go from here. If Deirdre and him actually do develop something, we'll have to see. But Elizabeth and Stobart, it's kind of awkward between those two because deep down she is starting to fall in love with him. At the same time, she knows he's also cheating on her, so you don't really know what's going to happen between Elizabeth and Stobart. I'm definitely interested in that overall relationship. I think that definitely is very interesting where that's going to go. As far as Oleg clearly is trying to cover up everything, and I think he's trying to steer as far away from the CIA as humanly possible, but his mother knows what's going on. No one else seems to know. His boss doesn't know. His father doesn't know. But I think eventually they are going to get involved, and I just don't really think things are going to go Oleg's way. I think he's just gone so far away from the CIA that I feel like things are just going to turn out way worse for him than he thinks they are. I just don't really know what's going to happen here. I think eventually things are going to connect. Nothing really connects that whole Philip and Oleg related theory. I don't know if that's actually true. I just kind of thought like that might be a possibility, but we'll have to see really where that's going to go. And then the other thing to really talk about is Stan and Aderholt. In fact, with this Russian woman right now, she seems very hesitant and she has a lot of demands, but are they really willing to give in to her? We'll have to see. The CIA doesn't seem as welcoming, but Stan and Aderholt do seem like they want to get her on board, and they actually do want to help her, but like I said, she has a lot of demands, so we'll have to see really what's going to happen there. Stan is definitely starting to get suspicious about Elizabeth and Philip because he's seeing a lot of comparisons to those two. But Phillip is also suspicious of Renee, so we'll have to see really where that's going to go. Overall, guys, like I said, this wasn't a huge episode, but it was a really good table-setting episode of what I think is really to come in the next few episodes of the season. I really enjoy this episode overall. A lot of just really nice, thoughtful conversations. You know, something the Americans always does succeed at. It's just two people having a conversation, the way it really develops them, the way it gets them closer, much like it does with Elizabeth and Paige. I really do like the way this season is highlighting that relationship. I really did enjoy this episode overall. I'm definitely giving the Americans Season 5, Episode 8, Immersion, a 4.5 out of 5, or an A-. So for guys, for this episode, the Americans, the most you guys thought of this episode overall, left your thoughts in it. I really did enjoy this episode overall. Like I said, this season is a bit of a different type of pacing than others. Like, the show has always been slow, but this season is just a little bit slower than others. I think it's because they know they have one more season left. They're not trying to get too deep into what's really going on. I think the last few episodes are going to be insane, but I do like that the season's been a little bit more slower pace. I think it's actually worked for their benefit. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for the latest episode of The Americans, which I heard is incredible, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.